Hello and welcome to the demonstration of MageDebugBar, a tool that is aimed at investigating Magento layout. Now, as many of you will be aware, Magento has a built-in tool for displaying templates, indicating where templates are used and what blocks are used to render parts of the page. It tends to be difficult sometimes to follow the dotted red lines, and it interferes with the layout of the page, but all the same it does give some useful information. There are other tools like CommerceBug2 or MageDebugBar that aim to give you the same information but in a slightly easier to follow form. However, none of these tools allow you to actually look at where this stuff was configured and to try and understand the configuration and how it relates to what was rendered on the screen. And that is what MageDebugBar tool hopes to do. It's built on top of something called PHP Debugbar, which just has the framework for collecting data on the server, moving that data to the browser, and then providing an area for you to display your data. So we can make this see this by looking on the tab here, or we can click on the up arrow here, and we can see the layout, what was rendered on our page. So the page tab here is very much about what was actually rendered. So the root block was rendered, and inside the root block we had the head block, and inside the head block we had cookies, the viewport, and etc. Like the template hints, it shows this is the block alias that gives us the PHP class of the object responsible for this rendering, and often these objects, they collect the data, but the actual production of HTML is left to a template over here. So we can click on page HTML and we see the actual PHP that was used, the class that was used. We can see what path it came from, and we can click on the template and it will load the template file for us, where we can see this is actually generating HTML, head tags, getting the child HTML block head, which is this one over here. So you can see it's the template which is responsible for deciding which blocks to render and in which order. And they have to be configured. If they're not configured, these blocks wouldn't exist, but it is the template that decides what and where these things are produced. So I'll just close those for a minute. We can look at the configuration. If I click on root, that will load the configuration file that declared the block with the name root. We can see also the block head in here is also in the same file. Now, this XML file, all of the attributes, or most of the attributes in here, provide links to other parts of the configuration or PHP classes or PHP methods. So you can see if I hover over this type, this is a reference to a PHP class which I can click and load. Same again here. If I scroll down just a little bit here, we've got these block cookies with a template. So that was a bit previous. If I click on the template, as you just saw, it loads the correct template so we can look at it. I'm just going to make this window a little bit larger so we can see what's going on. If we go back up the top here to our block root, we try and hover over this template, however we find it's disabled. That's because this isn't the template that was actually used. It was configured, but if we look over the other side here at root, it was actually rendered with one column template, not the 3-column template we see here. So some of the attributes aren't clickable if they're disabled. And in fact there are some whole sections of this XML file which are disabled. If we go down the bottom, we'll see that's disabled. These handles, so this opening block here is declaring a handle. Only certain handles were active when the page was rendered, and these handles were not active, and therefore there's no clickable areas in here because they were not used in rendering the page. Let's just go back up the top. When we come to this block here, the head block, so it was created with this PHP class, and then it was modified before it was used by these actions. So these are method calls. So if I click on the name of the method, it will load the correct class and take me to the correct method. Right, so let's have a quick look at the next tab now, the Handles tab. Whereas the Page tab shows what was rendered, the Handles tab shows what was configured. And we can look in here. These are all the handles that were active when this page was rendered, so we can click on particular handles and we can see what they contributed to the layout. Or we can click on all and we get an overview of everything. And one of the first things we notice that someone set the template to page 1 column. You may remember before we saw that it was rendered with page 1 column but configured with page 3 columns. Well, here we see why. Someone over here in this handle called page 1 column, they reference the root block and call the method set template. Of course we could click on and see the definition of that function. So this can be quite useful. Unfortunately, people can also set the template within PHP code. If they don't do it in configuration, obviously this tool cannot display it. We also notice we've got some grayed out blocks here. So this is a block that was rendered, that was configured, but it was never rendered. It wasn't actually used by the template. So the configuration can contain blocks that the template chooses not to display. Now, to investigate further, we're going to go and have a look at a different page, the jewellery page. Okay. If we look in this right tab here, you'll notice up on the screen here how it's highlighted. If I just move around a bit, if you look over on the right hand side, that compare products block is getting a little highlight round it with the right tab. This happens to with all the blocks that are displayed on the screen. So global notices you see at the top, header. If I expand the header, we get the store language, the welcome, the mini cart, and we can go down the menu, the search box, etc. We can go down to the footer. It tells us the footer's down the bottom there somewhere and we can't see it. So if we scroll down, we look at the footer, and we look at the different sections of the footer, the newsletter, and the different blocks of footer information. So this can be explored to see who is responsible for the different bits of information on the screen. In the right tab, the right area of the page, if we look on the handles here, the right section, we've got a blue block for a rendered block, we've got a grey block for a non-rendered block, and we've got a red block for a removed block. So if we look down here, we can see under the catalogue category layered no children handle, it was decided to remove this particular block. And we can go look at that handle here, and we can see it removed product views from the right and moved them over to the left. If we look down here, that customer logged out, so that's a handle that's always active when there's no logged in customer. We can see it as a login link. Actually, we can see it down there, the login link down there that's been added in. These actions, like the add link action over here, they only make sense if they're inside a block, because they act upon the containing block. So here, when we've added the add link, because it's inside this handle, so the action add link is inside the customer logged out handle, but the top links block isn't. The top links block is actually in a totally different handle. It's in the default handle, I think. If we just move up here, yeah, the default handle. So It's displayed here with a purple block, so it shows it is a render block, but it's from another handle. Okay, a couple more things we can look at in blocks. If we look down here, when a block is called, it can request to be put before or after another block in the display. So these are block names, so we could click on those and follow those to another block. So that's blocks pretty well done. We'll have a quick look at actions. We've already seen how we can click on the method name to see the method. If we scroll down here, we see we've got some orange ones which look quite similar. When we look at those, we have an action method, and then we have ifconfig. What Magento does here, it looks up this. This is a flag which can have a true or false value. If it returns true, then the action is performed. If it returns false, then it's not. So we can click on that and discover what the configuration value was set to. Now, if we go back to customer logged out and look at this method, we see it takes a parameter of a string login, and then it takes this, which is a method call. And if we look over on the right hand side, I'll just change the size a little bit. Okay. We can see the first argument is called login, the second argument has got a helper. What happens here is that Magento will call this is a module, and this is a method name. It will call this method to get the value to pass in as an argument to the add link method. So if we click on that, it goes to the customer helper data module, and then the get login URL method. There is one other thing we can see here is the translation system. This translation attribute, there's no link, but it says which bits are being translated. So we have the label here and the title there. This module contains a method called __, which is used to perform translation. So we can click on that, and it will take us to the __, method. So I think that's just about all of the different types of configuration attributes that we can link to, but it means you can go around and you can explore the configuration and hopefully try and work out what's been going on the screen. So that's about it. That's the demonstration. There is one extra feature. Because this panel over here is read-only, you might look through and you might want to fix something, or you might want to use the facilities of your IDE to follow links within PHP, because at the moment there's no link of this to the actual method. We have on here an open in editor link, and then that opens it up in PHP Storm. At the moment this only works with PHP Storm because it has a plugin called Remote Call which facilitates this sort of behaviour. I'm not aware of any other IDEs that have the same support. I've downloaded the trial version of PHP Storm just to demonstrate that to you. I'm normally a Vim user. Actually, I won't do that just yet. Let's go back where I was. So I'm a Vim user and I don't have such a plugin. However, if I hover over there and hit Control-C, it copies the path to the clipboard, and I can then, in Vim, I can load that file here fairly simply. I can go to the correct line. So that still saves quite a lot of typing. Not quite as good as the opening editor, but there you go. Now, you're more than welcome to go to demo.magedebugbar.org to play with this tool. If you wanted to install it on your own Magento installation to play with, then you can get it from GitHub, and it has installation instructions. I've only tested it with Magento 1.9. It may work in 1.8 or 1.7. It's not going to work in Magento 2 yet. Hopefully it will one day. Now this has been produced as part of my final year project for my university degree, and I would appreciate, for those of you who can spare the time, some feedback. If you go to the wiki, ask you here really to either add a new page to the wiki with some feedback, or you can email me at my student address do2467b at student.staffs.act.uk. So this has been Bob Davison giving you a demonstration of MageDebugBar. Thank you very much for listening.